What people are seeing on social media and even on mainstream cable news, they are the most salacious clips, and oftentimes they are a very short period of time.
Everybody just wants to rip each other apart, watch it on TV.
A lot of people think that we're like burning our city down and we're rioting and destroying everything. I mean, I think there's some level of truth to that.
I asked them, do you plan on getting sprayed? We might be ready to protest right now, but we don't need no helmets, we don't need no goggles.
That mayhem and that chaos is keeping people in fear. That is terrorism in the city of Portland.
Do you feel threatened right now?
Vaping illness blamed for Antifa is murder hornet panic against e-cigarettes, and parents should know.
As clickbait headlines warp our view of the world, we're going down the rabbit hole to ask, how afraid should we really be? On this episode, the media's favorite boogeyman, Antifa.
They've been terrorizing people, and when they can get away with it, violently attacking people.
They're essentially Bolsheviks.
Trump has vowed to label Antifa a terrorist organization.
They are not misguided freedom fighters or teenagers. They are actually organized.
I've been watching the coverage. Mobs of people in black burning down and terrorizing cities. Right-wing media loves to call them thugs, and the president tweeted he wanted to designate them a terrorist organization. But is this really a mass conspiracy of organized crazy leftists? Strapping in for our rabbit hole plunge, I first connected with a terrorist expert.
Would you consider a group like Antifa a terrorist group?
Well, I mean, that's a loaded question because, first of all, we're asking, is it a group? It's a pretty amorphous kind of movement. Generally speaking, people self-identify as being Antifa. There's no command and control structure. You know, there's a difference between civil unrest and terrorism in that terrorism is a premeditated and also systematic act. So if we're talking about the protests in the US right now, whether they're Antifa or not, there's little evidence that this has really been kind of a targeted, premeditated thing. A lot of the time it's been kind of demonstrations that have deteriorated into unrest.
Still a bit confused, I started to search for Antifa. I touched down in the anarchist jurisdiction in Portland, Oregon, looking for alleged members of Antifa that had been rioting for 3 months straight. We decided to scope out the scene our first night. We walked with a group of what I thought might be Antifa to an ICE facility, where things quickly took a chaotic turn as they started to vandalize the structure.
Shit, it's about to go down. Uh-oh, we got another glass break. Okay. I don't know where these cops came from, but they just pushed everybody back. Right now, it's just kind of a standstill. It's kind of like a face-off. How often does this happen? Every night? Every night, all fucking night. So this is happening every night.
Different neighborhoods, but every night.
Are you out here all the time? Are you?
Every night.
It's like an adrenaline rush.
Our first night was quite the welcome party. The next day I met up with Jamal Williams, a local activist, to break this down for me.
First of all, let's just keep it plain, right? You and I might be ready to protest right now, but we don't need no helmets, we don't need no goggles, right? Like, that's a touchy thing, right? Because I'm preaching nonviolence. Let's go to the building, but don't nobody set any fires. And I'm not the one to tell people how to protest. I'm only one person. The whole situation would have changed had the police chief come downstairs the first night and said, you know what, we're with you. Instead, they came out with the riot gear like, shut up. And then they shot those people who weren't doing anything.
Law enforcement and federal agents in the city have come under fire for their aggressive tactics used on protesters and mobs, often labeled Antifa. These groups dressed in black come geared up, prepared for direct confrontations with police. But how many of these people are Antifa? Who is Antifa?
I don't know if I've ever even really spoken to one because nobody's just came up and identified themselves as, hey man, I'm from the Antifa squad or whatever. So I don't know about all of that. And I'm not speaking against Antifa. I'm speaking against fires in the name of Black Lives Matter though.
Yeah. Hi there.
Excuse me, they're not going to do more of that tonight, are they?
What?
Sorry? More of the demonstrations? We're not sure what's going to happen tonight. I should go buy a gun.
I think, yeah, if you want to, it's your right.
She just,
She probably lives around here, and the protest she probably doesn't like it.
Yeah.
And so she said, now I'm gonna go buy a gun. And that's what she said. She said, I should go buy a gun.
yeah.
And that's a real feeling. You can't discount that feeling. You
Right.
can't say her feelings don't matter,
Yeah.
right? Her life matters too.
Yeah.
Yeah, her life matters too. So much so that she feels like she needs to go buy a gun, right? Now, I wonder how long black people been feeling like that, like how she felt. That was just one night.
After 80 plus days of constant protesting, it's no surprise some folks here feel afraid. Undeterred, I showed up at the protest that evening, hoping to finally meet someone from Antifa. As we caught up with them, however, it looked like a totally different crowd. Gone were the tactical shields, and instead there were distinct leaders moving the group through a neighborhood.
Folks, yes, I know Joe Biden fucking sucks, but vote could leave, but please, and please don't vote for technically bitch out here.
So we were at a protest yesterday, and that ended in a riot. This kind of shows a range of the different protests here in Portland, right? So what's this range look like?
There's no right way to protest. Everyone has their way of protesting, but for every protest you have, it's about constant pressure.
Our way, a lot of times, is just causing a disturbance. We like to be loud and fuck with people, like, I don't know, like put some flashlights in their houses or something, call out white people in the streets who aren't protesting with us, and tell people we're here and we're not going anywhere.
Your job for next week, when we announce our next march, your job is to bring at least 5 people and tell 20 people. Keep doing the work, keep coming out.
Media likes to look at things that gets people's attention, and the media likes to look at things that are like eye-catching. They're not focusing on these kinds of marches. They only capture what they know people want to see. And we aren't that eye-catching entertaining. Why? Because we tell the truth, because we're smart, because we're not burning shit down, so they're not gonna watch us.
Kai and E didn't strike me as the Antifa terrorists I'd read about. How many groups are operating in Portland? I linked up with Corey Elia, a community advocate journalist who had been covering the nightly protests since the beginning, to help me sort out who might be Antifa.
There's a big gradient in terms of what the protest consists of. How does this vary every night?
This crowd is not Antifa. It's a crowd of about a half dozen to maybe a dozen different organization groups.
The reality in Portland is that there are many small groups that organize across a decentralized network of loose collectives. Nobody is really in charge, but all the groups promote and talk to each other.
And every single one of them seems to have a slightly different message. Some are about reform, some are about complete abolishment of the current system. Just people wanting to protest. And yes, there are certain individuals usually coming out and looking to just destroy stuff. And then like there are direct action nights where you will see just people all in black showing up to occupy public spaces, be loud, throw basically what looks like a block party, and on the edge of it there's some vandalism going on and stuff like that. I mean, that's probably one thing you're gonna see. I don't know where Irving Park Assembly tonight's going, but if they end up going to one of the precincts, you might see that.
As Corey predicted, the assembly of protesters at Irving Park made their way through the rain to the North Police Precinct. If this group of protesters in tactical gear was Antifa, what I witnessed certainly wasn't scary terrorism. What followed was a delicate balance of agitation, hijinks, and some form of modern art.
This is the Portland Police Bureau. Do not enter or remain upon the North Precinct property.
Just got on the loudspeaker and asked people to stop throwing projectiles and shining lasers, which it sounds like a parent trying to get their kid to stop doing something.
Stop throwing objects and/or pointing lasers at officers.
It's just kind of ridiculous. Oh my God. All right, so we've been standing out here for about 2 hours in a bit of a standoff, and now we've had a recycling bin on fire. Everybody just kind of moved back a little bit. I'm sure you've watched the news. If you run into somebody who's only been observing that echo chamber, what do you tell them about this situation going on here?
They're not centralized. They're just a giant mess of people, mass, and it usually ends up being somewhat of a mess.
We got one of those scooters for rent.
One of the more interesting things I see from the alt-right conservative medias is anybody at these protests that shows up, if they're wearing mostly black or all black, regardless if they're black bloc or participating in that way or anything, they're instantly labeled as Antifa.
This protest was declared a riot less than an hour later. Between the few arrests we witnessed and the dumpster fire, it's easy how someone might see just a handful of these images and think that the city was in chaos, when in reality, this protest had mostly been contained to a small area outside the precinct. After 3 days of searching, I realized the oldest active Antifa group in the country, Rose City Antifa, actually had an email address. Very odd for a supposed terrorist group. Luckily, they agreed to meet with me.
Our group is kind of one example of organizers who are dedicating specifically our time and efforts to learning about, spreading information about, and doing work to counter fascist organizing.
So, what is Antifa?
Means being an anti-fascist. Maybe they coordinate with other people or organize. It could also just be part of a person's broader political stances, but it doesn't necessarily connote a organizational relationship.
Tell me a little bit about the work you do.
We collect information over long periods of time to provide relevant information and useful information to the community that's trying to keep themselves safe from fascist organizing and fascist violence. So that means doxing people at times.
How active has Rose City Antifa been in these recent protests here in Portland?
We don't feel, especially as a majority white organization that specifically focuses on anti-fascism, that it is our place to try and dictate the goals or the direction of a movement that is led by black women and young black people for the most part. We're not organizing any protests. We are, other than those that are specifically intended to counter fascist organizing or fascist repression.
While we were in Portland, Rose City Antifa published an article exposing the extreme right-wing connections to organizers that were holding a rally our last day. The rally at the now famed Justice Center was attended by several right-wing groups including Patriot Prayer, the Proud Boys, Back the Blue, anti-Marxists, and plain old Trump supporters. These right-wing groups were flanked by an equally diverse coalition of left-wing groups: Democratic Socialists, BLM, anarchists, anti-fascists, and maybe some Joe Biden Democrats.
Get on the side of justice, not on the side of nationalism. Oh, you go. This is where I live. What the fuck, man?
The direct action part of your work, if you hadn't shown up, they would have been screaming into the air.
It's not about specifically just that they're there to say their thing and then they won't bother anybody. The whole point is that if anybody expressed any dissent with what they were saying, that person would in all likelihood be subject to violence. Proud Boys have a long and storied history of basically just beating the shit out of pretty much anybody they feel like, especially anybody who has the gall to, for example, shout "fuck Trump" when they ride past them in their car holding a Trump flag.
I do not want this to happen in Portland, but I am not going to let them get away with this kind of stuff. Where am I going to go? Where are you going to go? Where are your children going to go? When that kind of stuff continues and this system breaks down, I don't support BLM. I do support Black Lives. Black Lives Matter? No. They are a Marxist, communist organization. Mark my words.
Do you think the news reports that I receive across the country are as bad as things are actually here?
Yes, they are that bad. Now, is the entire city of Portland? No. But that mayhem and that craziness and that chaos is keeping people in fear.
I'm trying to settle the chaos here. It's just so ridiculous. Holy fuck, people just throwing shit back and forth at each other. I just got hit with a rock. I think somebody got hit with a python. There's a loud explosion. They carried him away. It looks like some sort of explosive with marbles inside of it. Shit. That's shit. It's real gas. This sucks, man. This is such fucking bullshit. On both sides. Like, it's just dumb. Fucking media's eating this shit up.
So a lot of people who come to these nightly protests, and the ones that have turned violent, doesn't it get complicated when you're so anonymous that you can't say, wait a minute, not all these people are Antifa, they're not all with me, because they get grouped in with everybody because they're wearing block, right?
The point of block is to project your identity, be able to blend in with the crowd, and be able to function both autonomously and collectively with other folks who are there trying to reach the same goals, right? The overriding principle for like how we decide what we're gonna do cannot be based on the needs and priorities of media organizations.
Do you want to kill Trump supporters?
No, we don't want to kill Trump supporters. We want to stop fascists from organizing using whatever tactics are most effective.
Is there a performative element to these recent protests?
When we started off doing this, no one wore any of these goddamn helmets. And then people started getting shot in the head. So people were like, well, damn, I should probably get a helmet, right? The defense started tear gassing everybody, so people started wearing gas masks. It's one of the main ways that you can be on the front lines, exert that kind of consistent pressure, and be opposed like directly, and be able to have people there saying, that's fucked up, we don't agree, and those folks should get the fuck out of here.
All right, so behind me is the remnants of what's left of this. We're now across the street in this park. The two groups, they essentially kind of battled it out and then chased the Blue Lives Matter Patriot Prayer group down the street and around the corner. So now we're back here, and the Black Lives Matter Liberal Coalition is taunting the police now, and there's some elements of the more conservative delegation over there. It's very hard to talk about who these groups are because they're so loose. There's so many different groups here. You got the anarchists, Antifa, Black Lives Matter, Joe Biden Democrats, who the fuck knows?
Context is key to understanding the situation in Portland. I began to think about how the news had informed my opinion. I needed some help understanding this, so I reached out to Dr. Rashawn Ray.
You know, certain people see certain clips and they think the whole city of Portland is burning. How do you think the way that we receive media and information through social media or in the news, how do you think that does a disservice to what we actually know about these protests?
So social media is obviously a gift and a curse. Everyone from a local protester to the president of the United States uses this medium to circumvent traditional media channels. On the other hand, however, social media is set up where these are oftentimes short clips taken out of context. What people are seeing on social media and even on mainstream cable news are buildings burning, and it looks like massive destruction in a city. And oftentimes news media will say Portland rather than saying a specific neighborhood, because people won't resonate with that neighborhood unless you're from there. But people who live there, I mean, you can see people in Portland just going about their normal day, completely unencumbered by what's happening with the protest. And a lot of people simply take a 45-second clip on Instagram or Twitter, and what they think is, wow, imagine if this was down the street from my house. That's where people's minds go. And in this era, Donald Trump is stoking fears in that way, that response to that is something that people are reacting to.
Ultimately, Antifa is mostly a political stance, like being feminist or pro-Second Amendment, rather than some galaxy brain conspiracy network. And yes, the decentralized nature of direct action within a black bloc can be frightening. There's no clear leadership, no singular vision. It creates a space for extremists to engage in violence. But the heart of anti-fascist ideology is to fight against white supremacist groups that the Department of Homeland Security has called the most persistent and lethal domestic terror threat to the country. And that's something we should really be afraid of.